Hello, everybody. Welcome to the release webinar of WSO2 Enterprise Integrator for the release of 650. And I'm Sasikala Kotigode, an associate tech lead of the integration team of WSO2. And we have Asanka Abevira, who's a tech lead of the integration team of WSO2 with us. If you look back, it's been quite a while since the last release of WSO2 Enterprise Integrator, which is the 640 release, which happened in October 2018. And we've been focusing on developing the developer experience of the integration developer. So if we look back, ESB and the Enterprise Integrator has been there in the market for quite a long time, and the runtime has been tested and improved significantly. But in this release, we specifically focused on improving the developer experience. So while developing the experience, one thing we found out that we could improve was the experience of development. That is where we have introduced an integration studio, which is the all new tool for your development. We have, since the micro integrator profile is the developer centric profile, the runtime of the enterprise integrator, we have looked into ways of improving the developer experience of the micro integrator profile as well. And then we'll be talking about how we have improved the runtime which is used in the micro integrator and the enterprise integrator as well. Then we'll be talking about how you could migrate your applications from the previous versions, which is almost a seamless migration, and we'll be talking about that at the end. And finally, we'll be talking about the future improvements we are about to do in the upcoming releases. So as I said earlier, we have introduced an all-new integration studio. This gives you a unique experience that you have never experienced with the previous developer tools. So if we look back, with the previous releases of Enterprise Integrator, what we had was an Eclipse runtime, an Eclipse redistribution with the WSO2 Developer Studio features installed. So there was actually two ways of how you could use the Developer Studio previously. You could either download a pure Eclipse distribution and install the WSO2 Developer Studio features on top of it, or we distributed a dedicated WSO2 Developer Studio features installed Eclipse distribution where you could use that purely. But in this release, we have introduced the all-new WSO2 Integration Studio, which is still based on the Eclipse runtime. So you don't have to worry that you have been using the previous Eclipse and this will be so different, because this is basically based on the same Eclipse runtime. So you can use the shortcuts and the knowledge and the experiences you have gained through working with the previous Developer Studio. Basically, what we have done here is we have packed the Eclipse runtime with only the WSO2 Developer Studio features installed, so that this is specifically dedicated for the tooling experiences. So this is what is to be noticed is that this is a WSO2 branded standard application which is based on Eclipse. While talking with the customers, one thing we saw was that we could enhance the developer experience through embedding the JDK. So if we look back, the Eclipse runtime is not embedding the JDK, and previously our users had to configure the JDK depending on the Eclipse versions they were using. But with the introduction of the integration studio, we have embedded adopt open JDK so that you don't have to configure the integration studio, and you can just start with your workflow right ahead. And then in order to so the main focus was that we can to improve the workflow from development to testing and debugging up to deployment. So one of the main things we did was embedding the micro integrator inside the developer studio, so that you don't have to go out of the developer studio, or you don't have to configure any servers in order to test your applications. So this is, as I explained earlier, this is a completely revamped developer experience. So if we have a look at the previous view, it was something similar to this. So you could see the mediators in a plain background, but now this is the all new theme we are introducing. So if you look, this is more appealing and more colorful. We have changed the icons. Then if you have a look on the right panel, so we have templates and help guides to walk you through the development process. And then we have icons which are appealing, and we have talked with our UX expertise, and then we have improved on your experience to give you more appealing display. Then we also have introduced a properties pane, which you can see on the bottom. This is a form-based properties pane. If you recall the previous developer studio, it was a plain table where it was key values, but now we have introduced a form-based properties pane to be more meaningful. And then, as I said, so this release was mainly focused on improving the experience from development, from getting started up to development and testing and debugging and deployment. So one thing we see is, like, there may be a large scale of users of the integration studio who might not know what type of a project they might to create, how to use the integration studio. So we are guiding you through the steps of creating a project. So if we recall the previous one, when we are going to create a project, we had to know what type of a project we have to create. So we had to search through the type of the project to create. But now we have guided you. On the left panel, you can see what type we ask you what type of a project you need to create, whether it's an ESB project, whether it's a DS project, whether it's a BPS project, or whatever. Then you can basically create a new project, or you can even open your. So one thing to notice that even though we have revamped the developer experience of the integration studio, it's still based on the Eclipse runtime, and we have developed it in a way that it's totally and completely backward compatible. So there's no worry. You can go ahead and open your projects that were developed using the previous versions of the developer studio. And then if you're an all new user who has no clue about the integration studio, we are here to help you with a template guide. So basically, we have some template projects which you can click on, and then you can see the development flow and learn on how to create your own projects. So basically, once you click on one of these projects, you will get a view as shown now. So basically, we have clicked on the Hello World project here. And then on the right panel, you see a simple description on the template. So it describes the scenario that we are going to test, and then it gives you steps how to run this sample using the WSO2 micro integrator. So as I told you earlier, the micro integrator is embedded. So we are trying to make you use the micro integrator because it eases your workflow. But if you are actually if you are an old user who's familiar with using the developer studio with the enterprise integrator, of course we have that capability, so you can just have a look at how to run it on the enterprise integrator. So basically here you get the the workflow, the development flow, the mediation flow of the Hello World project. So it's basically creating a request and responding back to the customer. So the next thing is, once you click on these icons on the work pane, which are mediators, it will be loading its properties. As I said earlier, we have revamped this properties pane to be more appealing and more meaningful. And if you have a look here, you see that for each property we guide you through explaining what the properties are meant to be and what values are accepted. And all throughout the developer studio, we'll have tooltips to describe what each and every mediator means, so that you don't have to go out of the integration studio to find out what this mediator means, or to know how to use it. So we are basically guiding you within the integration studio itself. So one of the main improvements we did to improve the developer experience was context-aware code completion. So if it refers to the term IntelliSense, because we do suggest on the codes that need to be added based on the context. So if we take the example that is shown here, we have added a payload factory mediator. And once you click on this, it suggests you to add the format tag because it's something that needs to go with the payload factory. And also it provides you code completion. One thing is suggestions and the other thing is it gives you code completions. And one of the next most important improvements we did for the developer experience was synapse validations. And so what if we are to understand what that means, it means that once we add the workflow, it'll validate the mediator workflow through the Synapse runtime. So basically what we have done here is we have added some mediator after a send mediator which is not valid in the runtime. So here itself, once you add a mediator itself, it gives you a warning saying that it's prohibited. And then if you switch the design, that the previous view was about the design view, and if you switch with the source view, so this is basically the source view of the design view that was showed previously. So the source view will show you a warning saying that there is an incorrect configuration. So if you hover on this warning icon, you will be shown something like this. So this is saying what the error is and what could be done to overcome the problem. Then one of the most prominent enhancements we did for the integration studio was the enhancements for the data mapper. So as I told you earlier, we wanted to improve the developer experience from the development to deployment itself. So once you click on the data mapper mediator, it will be adding you these boxes which are self-explanatory. So if you recall the previous versions, it was just adding some boxes where you needed to know what you have to do with these mediators. But this is self-explanatory, so you can you can load an input file and generate the input schema, and load an output file and generate the output schema, and you can configure the input schema and the output schema in live. So once you generate the input schema loading an input file, one thing it would do is it would provide you a sample input data so that you can try out the data mapper. So this trying out of the data mapper was an all new feature we have introduced, so that you don't have to go out of the integration studio for you to test the mapping of the data mapper. It will simply provide the content you have added for for generating the input schema, and it would do the mapping. When you click on try out, it will do the mapping and it will generate the output data. And if there is any error in the conversion, it will show that as well. So the main focus was that until you're done, you don't have to go out of the integration studio. So one of the other enhancements was the introduction of the property group mediator. So this is basically an all new mediator. So let's take a simple example. Even the most simple example would have, as you all know, we would have multiple properties included in a single view. So this is one of the basic simplest examples where it has just three properties. If you look at this, you can see that the screen is just full of these three properties and the send mediator. So once we add some more mediators, you will not be able to see the whole view, and it will be like quite hard for you to track the flow like that. So what we did was we introduced an all new property group mediator where you could simply add, like you could simply add here all the properties you wanted. That way it will take a minimal space, so that you can be focusing on your actual development flow, rather than just going through the properties and the mediators and the view. So if we switch to the source view, there's no much of a difference. So this is purely done to enhance the developer experience for the users who are using the integration studio. So if we look at the source view, it's simply adding the tag property group, wrapping the properties we have added all throughout this time. So as I said earlier, we wanted to improve the experience from development up until the end. So we have provided you with the built-in testing and debugging support. So we were capable of doing this with the introduction of the micro integrator profile as an inbuilt server. So basically you just have to click on your project and select to run it on the micro integrator. Then you would be able to see that the micro integrator profile has started, and you should be able to invoke the services you want, and you can just test them without having to go out of the integration studio. Then with the increased interest in cloud native technologies, we wanted to support Docker within the integration studio itself. We wanted to take out your burden of having to create Docker images manually after exporting the car applications you create within the developer studio. So what we did was, with the introduction of the integration studio, was introducing the capability to expose your car applications as a Docker image with a single click. So what you have to basically do is you have to click on the project, and you just have to click on the option to generate a Docker image, and then you just have to enter the name of the Docker image and the tag, and that will be it. So once the image is created, you should be able to list the Docker images and weave the image you just created. So if I am to give an introduction for you about the integration cloud. I hope you all are familiar with our integration cloud, which is our integration platform as a service. So we wanted to improve your experience in getting your applications deployed into our integration cloud, because we wanted to let you do it through the integration studio itself. So what we are promising is to get your application deployed in our integration cloud under 1 minute. So what you have to do is, it's quite simple. What you have to do is, you just have to click on the project, and you have to click on the option to deploy your project into the integration cloud. And then you need to, so basically you need to have an account in our integration cloud. For this, you just have to enter your information, and once you enter the information, you'll be able to view your applications in our integration cloud. So it's as simple as that. So if we recap what we have done so far, so we have improved all phases in the development phase, so that we are improving your end-to-end experience with the introduction of the integration studio. So as to the additional improvements we have done, we have enhanced the property view, as I told earlier, and then we have introduced default values and missing properties. So we have taken away the burden of you having to define all the properties that are related to a particular mediator. And then we have done significant improvements for the tool palette to improve the usability. And then we have improved on dependency jar resolving capabilities. So what this basically means is that, like, if you have maybe, let's say, a DB report mediator or a DB lookup mediator where you have to interact with a particular database, so we provide you the capability of downloading the relevant jar, the relevant connector within the integration studio itself. Then we have worked on concurrent resource loading optimization, so that the performance is improved, and you can switch through the panes as soon as possible. One thing I want to highlight is, I have been telling this all throughout this time, but the integration studio is a whole new revamped studio, but still it's compatible with the previous versions, with the previous the car applications, all the other applications that have been created using the previous versions of the developer studio. That is because we are using the same Eclipse runtime, and you don't have to worry about anything regarding that. So please do subscribe to our Integration Studio webinar series, which is upcoming in the next weeks.
Okay, now let's have a look at what we have in the micro integrator profile. So you all know that micro integrator profile is the cloud native version of the integrator profile that we provide with the enterprise integrator. So we are really excited to announce this on this special day where the cloud native enthusiasts are celebrating the Kubernetes 5th birthday. So let's start on what we have. So one of the significant changes that we have done with the distribution of micro integrator is this. So if you have worked with the micro integrator profile that was introduced in WSO2 EI 640, so it was provided as a runtime, and that runtime was available alongside all the other runtimes that was there in the previous EI versions. So whoever wants to use the micro integrator, they had to run the integration, the micro integrator runtime that is available in the EI distribution. And if they want to separate it out and use it in a Docker image or whatever the packaging that they use, they have to run the profile creator and then create the micro integrator binary and then use that. So this is sometimes add some additional steps to the developers who want to develop integrations with micro integrator. So what we thought was we thought of separating the micro integrator out as a separate binary, and provide all the other runtimes as the WSO2 EI 650 distribution. And the users who want to use micro integrator, they can separately download the WSO2 MI 100 binary, and that will only contain the micro integrator runtime, and then they can use this for all the purposes that they used the micro integrator in an 640 release. And then we have some additional distribution mechanisms as well for the micro integrator, but just for now, if you are using it as a virtual machine, you just have to use the WSO2 MI distribution. So just to get some background on the concepts and the things that we have introduced in the micro integrator profile, I'll just briefly go through a few of the basics concepts that we want to emphasize. So if we take a typical microservices architecture, what we have is a collection of microservices for specific tasks, and then these microservices normally talk with very lightweight communication mechanisms like HTTP. So normally these we have multiple services, since we want to distribute how we develop the complete system, and normally these different microservices are developed by different teams. So there can be microservices which use different technologies and different communication mechanisms. So still, even though it is microservices architecture, we still have the integration problem in these environments. So for that one, we can easily use the micro integrator to develop different integration solutions, and deploy that as a composite service in your microservices architecture. And this the advantage of this is you can apply all the EIP patterns that you know, and even the new patterns like choreography pattern you can use with the micro integrator, since we have an extensive support for all different type of connectors. And additionally, so you can use a micro integrator to expose whatever the proprietary legacy systems and the SaaS applications that you have and you already use in your enterprise to the microservices environment. So with that one, we have introduced a new concept in this release. We call it the micro integrator immutable Docker images. So how this works is, normally an integration developer is using the integration studio to develop the integration solutions, and normally at the end of the release, the development life cycle, we will end up with a carbon application. And then what we have done in this this release is we have introduced a micro integrator base image. So this base image you can use to write you can use a Docker image, and then create an application specific Docker image back in this carbon application. And why we call these immutable Docker images, the one thing that we want to emphasize is, earlier we were kind of we were able to use we were able to mount an external file system and have the carbon application and all those stuff there, and run the micro integrator as a runtime. And whenever we do changes in the file system, the artifacts we have to restart, since we don't have the hot deployment. So but even when we if we have hot deployment, again the problem will be that if we do something like rolling updates and things like that, so there can be some inconsistency. So what we wanted to do is we wanted to create an immutable Docker image with all the artifacts that we do not change during the CI/CD cycles or any life cycle like that, and then have that as a single unit where we can do extensive testing and push after verification to the production. So how you can do it is, in the Docker file you just have to use the Docker the correct base image, and you just have to copy the Carbon application to the deployment folder, and that will create these application specific immutable Docker image. So I will go through how you can use these immutable Docker images to deploy it in different environments. So just to give a brief idea about what you can do with these Docker images, we have two versions of the Docker base Docker image. One is the community version, which you can pull from the Docker hub, and what you have to do is you just have to use the WSO2 / micro integrator :100 as the base image name, and we also provide for all the subscribers, subscription customers, they can use their WAMP credentials and access the WSO2 Docker registry to get the updated micro integrator profile. So the difference is here now you have to use the docker.wso2.com / micro integrator :100 as the base Docker image. So the advantage is you will get all the bug fixes and security updates and everything that we do this for this release when you pull from this Docker registry. So you just have to configure your CI/CD to pull from this, and it will automatically have the most updated version of the micro integrator. So in the previous release, what we had to get information about the artifact was just a REST API. So you have to use that REST API whenever you want to get information about a API or a proxy service. But this again is not a very good option for a developer. And so to help those developers and simplify their life, so we have provided an CLI tool, which you can separately download from the WSO2.com website. And this tool is capable of communicating with remote micro integrator runtimes and get all the information regarding the deployed artifacts, like the deployed APIs, Carbon applications, proxy services, tasks like that. So you just have to download and configure, initialize the tool, and then you can straight away use it to query any detail that you want. And we have done a slight improvement to the existing REST API as well. Earlier what we had was we had just two resources to query on APIs and proxies, and but in this micro integrator 100 we have added quite a few resources as well to get more information regarding the deployed artifacts. So you can query about we already had APIs and proxy services. Now we can query about applications, tasks, sequences, endpoints, about inbound endpoints, and then get information related to those stuff. So I'll explain. So in the previous slide I told that these the Docker images we can use the base Docker images to create an immutable application specific Docker images. So one requirement is when we have an immutable Docker images, so we need to be able to deploy this Docker image in different environments. But typically when we take different environments, these different environments have different endpoints. Like if we take a staging environment, we normally have a mocked endpoints, and in a production environment we have the real endpoints. So we need to have the capability to change these endpoints depending on the environment. So how we do it with the micro integrator is you can use environment variables to define the endpoints in different environments. How you do it is when you define different endpoints, you can use the $system : prefix and a variable name to refer to an environment variable, and these different environment variables you can easily define in different environments. So if you're using an environment like if you are deploying in a Docker environment, defining an environment variable is a very trivial task. So we hope that this is a must-have feature, and we have implemented it in this version. So, and when we talk about the distribution size, this distribution size is a important parameter when when you are working with cloud native technologies, like getting a smaller uh, distribution size help you to quickly scale up and scale down in different environments. So previously what we had was the micro integrator went out as a runtime in the enterprise integrator, the zip file, and then you have to use the profile create and get the scaled down version, and but which does just have the stuff related to micro integrator. And that one typically it was 231 MB. So in this release we have separated it out and done some optimizations and reduced it to 137 MB. So that's like more than 40% reduction. So this helps you to pull these different artifacts quickly and deploy them in the different environments. So I'll just go through the developer workflow a typical integration engineer who's working on a micro integration solution would go through when you use these different tools that you would require. So we first have the setup stage where you just download all the required tools like WSO2 Integration Studio, Docker, Git, kubectl, and stuff like that will help you run these different artifacts. And then after you have set up these environments, you can straight away start on developing the integration solution. So only thing that you would need to develop an integration solution is our tooling called WSO2 Integration Studio. In there you can use graphical or the textual weave to develop different integration solutions. So after you have done develop the basic develop your required integration solution, you can use you only need the WSO2 Integration Studio tool, and you can create an Carbon application, and which consists of all these integration artifacts. And then since we have packaged the micro integrator inside WSO2 Integration Studio, you can deploy those artifacts in a micro integrator instance within the Integration Studio. And then as the fourth step, you can iteratively test and debug and improve this integration artifact. So you can use tools like SOAP UI, Postman, and then the capabilities that we have included in WSO2 integration for debugging. You can use that to debug any issue that you encounter and iteratively improve. So after normally doing this step, the developer's tasks are almost done, and the only step that you have is to publish these different artifacts that you have developed. So we can do it in several ways. One simple way is that you can commit all the integration artifacts to the version control system, and you can then the CI/CD system can pick up that artifacts and build the required Docker image and then push to the production system after doing the verification. Or you can also create an immutable Docker image yourself within the tooling and then provide it for testing. So either way, you after developing, you have to publish the stuff. So let's have a look at what happens after publishing. So this is the recommended CI/CD workflow that we think that will help the organizations quickly push changes to the production environment. So as I have mentioned earlier, normally we would have our integration artifacts in a version control system, and then we have provided the base Docker image in a Docker registry like Docker Hub or the WSO2 registry. So we just have to configure our CI/CD tool to pull from the Docker registry and then build the integration artifact and create the immutable container image. And then as the next step, we can then deploy this immutable Docker image in a staging environment, and then we can deploy whatever the required mock backends or mock services in the staging environment and run the integration tests to verify that we have not broken anything and our functionality is working correctly. After we have done all those verification steps, we can push the tested Docker image to the production environment. And here also we can, if we have specific environment things like environment variables and then deployment related stuff, we can take them from a version control system and deploy into the production. Another thing that we now have a concept called immutable Docker image. It's very easy to deploy the integration solutions that you have developed targeting the micro integrator into a Kubernetes cluster. What you have to do is you can just write a Kubernetes deployment YAML with all the deployment details that you want to be there in the Kubernetes cluster. So you can specify how many nodes you want, how you want to scale, how you want to update, and everything you can specify in the Kubernetes deployment YAML. And then using the kubectl tool, you can easily deploy it to the Kubernetes cluster.
So next, we'll be going through the runtime improvements we have done with the release of WSO2 EI 650. So we have provided the native JSON support for a number of mediators. So this means that it's not that we didn't have the JSON support. We had the JSON support, but we have improved the JSON support in a way that it's more performant and it's convenient to the users. So we have provided it in a number of mediators, that is the iterate mediator, the aggregate mediator, the enrich mediator, so that you can, whenever you want to process the payload, you can simply use a JSON eval to access the payload to be more performant. So in addition to that, we have also provided the inline specification of the of a JSON payload in enrich mediator when you are mapping it through an inline type. And another thing we have done for the JSON support is the support for data services. So we have enhanced it in a way that we have changed the request format from previous to now. So basically, when data services were exposed as REST services, previously you had to send the request in a way that they are prefixed with either post or put. That is the method. So we have removed that burden. We have taken that burden away from you, so that you can simply focus on sending the request alone. You don't have to prefix it with the method you sent. So we have done the same. We have done the same for batch requests as well. So earlier you had to prefix the batch request and each request within the batch request with the method you send. But now you can just simply send the request you need in the format you want. And we have done improvements in the area of box carring. So it did not have the JSON support for request boxes previously. So now we have introduced the JSON support for box carring in data services, so that you can work easily. And then we have improved in observability perspectives. So basically, we have provided the capability of integrating the enterprise integrator or the micro integrator with the Prometheus server. So we basically expose our metrics endpoints so that the Prometheus server can pull the metrics, and you can configure it. You can weave the statistics through Grafana or the Prometheus web UI or whatever you want in the way you want. So basically, this is a view of what you would see once Prometheus is integrated with the enterprise integrator. So this is basically weaving the number of messages received for the APIs, for the resources we have. So basically, we will be exposing a number of metrics, and you would be able to weave those in the way you want. So if we go through the other runtime improvements, we have provided the OData support for MongoDB, and then we have done some improvements in the area of message processors in a way that you can handle poison messages. That means that previously, once a poison message comes into a message processor, it was going in a cycle that we were not able to remove the poison message, but now we have added the capability of handling it, removing the poison messages whenever you need. And there are many more bug fixes and improvements done for the runtime, which affects the enterprise integrator runtime as well as the micro integrator runtime. You can view them through going to our GitHub repository. So if we go through the steps of migrating from older versions, uh, so you would be using ESB or Enterprise Integrator 6.3 or versions prior to Enterprise 6.3.0 older. So for each of those versions, what we recommend is an incremental migration, which means that you would have to keep migrating for the next version until the last version, which is EI 6.5.0. But from EI 6.4.0, the migration is seamless. Basically, you don't have to do anything other than replacing your binaries. But keep in mind, as we explained earlier with the micro integrated profile, we have changed some REST API endpoints, the configurations of REST API endpoints as to the port that is being set up and the request and response format. So keep in mind that if you were using some applications to access these APIs, you would need to migrate them. But other than that, there is nothing to be done on the Carbon applications. You just have to replace your product binaries when you're migrating from EI 6.4.0 to 6.5.0. So if we go through the future improvements, we are planning to introduce an integrator based on Ballerina, which is a code-based integration development language. And then we are planning to continue on enhancing the integration studio. We are planning to introduce a testing framework so that now if we have a look at what's going on now, we still have to test your development workflow by deploying a CVAP and testing, but we are planning on improving your experience by introducing a new test framework where you could test your mediation flow without having to deploy CAPs. Then we are planning to improve the integration of the enterprise integrator as well as the micro integrator with cloud native technologies, so to make the developers' life easier. Then we are also going to introduce a tool based on Visual Studio Code. So the thing is, we wanted to help the users who are familiar with the Visual Studio Code. So we wanted to introduce a new Visual Studio Code based tool so that the integration development is easier for those users. So that's it. You can ask questions if you have any.
Okay, we have one question. The question is, since there is a separate distribution for micro integrator, can we use WUM like previously? So in this release, actually there are two ways that we distribute the micro integration runtime. One is as a separate distribution called WSO2 MI10000 zip, which is like the previous one. So you can use a WUM with that, and the only difference is the product ID that you have to use with WUM. And then we have another method that we distribute the micro integrator, that is the base Docker image. So with the base Docker images, there is no need to use the WAM tool. So you can just use the WAM credentials to log in into the WSO2 registry, and then whenever you pull from that registry, you will get the WAM updated image. So yeah, that's how you can get the updated.
So there's another question asking what the image deployed from the integration studio is. So basically, the image is the CAP you develop. So this image uses the micro integrator base image as the base image, and then then copy the CAP and export that image as the Docker image.
We have another question. The question is, what is the future relationship between traditional integrator USB and the micro USB, the micro integrator? So I think so the micro integrator is the cloud native version of the integrator, and so it's like so we are targeting two audiences here. So with the traditional integrator, the ESP is more like a centralized deployment. So like you can have a centralized deployment, and you can deploy your different uh, carbon applications or the integration solutions to that one, and then govern from there. With the micro integrator, what we have is a more developer centric approach, where the different teams can develop their own integration solutions, and use micro integrator and then deploy it separately, like a more distributed in a more distributed manner. So that's the main difference. So it's like a different flavors of integrations for different architectural types.
Okay, so there's another question asking whether the integration studio is backward compatible. So as I explained during the slides, yes, it is completely backward compatible. So basically, you should be able to use your CApps, the car apps that were developed using the previous versions of the developer studio using the integration studio. But something to note is that the new mediators that were introduced in EI 650 will not be used with the older versions of the developer studio. So I hope that that question is answered. So it seems that we are running out of time. So we'll be ending up the webinar. So thank you for joining. Please do register to our upcoming webinar series as well. Thank you very much.